Hey everybody, it's Ultra64, and it's good to be back. I have a new series for everybody to introduce. It is called the Nostalgia Glasses, and in the series, I take a look back at games that are highly regarded, whether it be by me in the past or by people in general, to see if they still hold up today. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily by like the standards of today, as far as graphics and everything that we look at through the lens of today. But whether, like, if the game is still fun and if you'd still enjoy it in the present day. That's what I'm really looking to do. And this is kind of risky for me because it could either justify how I felt about a game in the past, where like, oh, this game's still great, or those memories I had of a game being so awesome, and then I go back and play it and it ends up being crap. That would be a really crappy feeling to have. But I'm willing to take that risk for you, the audience. Alright, and the first game I'm going to do in this series is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie for the Game Gear. Let's do it.
The 90s. It was simpler times back then. Growing up as a kid in the early 90s, one of the first shows I really loved was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I was obsessed with it. I wanted to get as many Power Ranger action figures and toys as I possibly could. I loved the fight scenes in the show, and I was in awe of the Power Rangers suits. They looked so awesome. The original Power Rangers are easily the most iconic Power Rangers of all time. I remember being excited that there was going to be a Power Rangers movie. Sadly though, a big chunk of the original cast refused to be in the movie. A big reason for that is because of a man named Saban who owned the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers brand. He refused to give the cast a pay raise for the movie. The cast was only going to be paid $600 a week while shooting 12 plus hours a day, which is absolutely ridiculous. When it comes to the game though, it was released on multiple systems and each version of the game was unique to that system. But for this video, I'm going to be covering the Game Gear version. So, in the main menu, you have 4 options to choose from. Story Game, which explains the story of the movie and is where you'll spend the majority of your time playing. Versus Game, which is a fighting match marathon mode that lets you play as any character you see in the story game. Link Game, which lets you face another person if you have the proper setup. And lastly, the options. The options are very straightforward. You can set the difficulty between easy, normal, and hard. You can also set how many match points it takes to win a fight, between 1, 3, and 5. There's also the sound test, which lets you listen to all the music tracks and sound effects in the game. Let's dive right into the story game. The story of this movie game gets explained to you with very basic text, images, and visual effects. But that's okay, considering the time period this game was released and the system it was made for. They couldn't really do anything elaborate, even if they wanted to. So at the character select screen, you get to choose between the 6 Power Rangers that were in the movie. Alpha 5, the assistant robot for Zordon, is the cursor that lets you hover over who you want to select. Your options are the Blue Ranger, the Pink Ranger, who is played by Amy Jo Johnson, who was actually my first childhood crush. Isn't she beautiful? What a babe. There's the Red Ranger, the White Ranger, who was my favorite Ranger. I mean, he had a sword and no one else did. How could I pick anyone else? The Yellow Ranger and the Black Ranger. So gameplay wise, this game is a pretty basic fighting game. That's not a bad thing though. If a game is simpler, it's easier to understand and will take less time to master. The Game Gear only had 2 face buttons, so that is all you get to use to execute attacks. One button does punches and the other does kicks. What type of punch or kick you do depends on if you are standing, crouching, or jumping. You can press both buttons together to do a more powerful attack, and every character has at least 3 attacks by pressing this button combination. And what kind of position the character is in will decide what attack is performed. If the character is in a stationary position, they will use a gap closing attack. If they are jumping, they will dive down from their position in the air to attack the opponent. They can also throw the opponent if they are standing next to them while pressing both buttons. Some characters have an additional attack if they are in a crouching position. When I was a kid playing this game though, I didn't think about what kind of attacks I should do or what would be a good strategy to win. I just mashed buttons. And while that can work, since going back to play this game now for this video, it's a lot more satisfying to think of strategies and to use the right moves at the right times. There's actually a surprising amount of depth to this game, considering there is only 2 attack buttons. Really, the key attacks to use to deal good damage are special attacks. And as a kid, I had no idea how to use them, because I didn't have an instruction manual to tell me what inputs were needed to execute them. So anytime I used a special move, it was completely an accident. I wanted to know how to do them before I even started making this video. I was seriously about to buy one on eBay when one of the listings had a picture of the exact thing I needed to see. It showed the pages of the instruction manual on how to do the power moves and special attacks. They're actually pretty simple to do. There's 3 special moves. You press down, then forward while pressing one of the buttons to do a special move. Each button will have its own special move assigned to it. The third one is the same thing, but you press both buttons instead of one. Lastly, there is a super special move that you can use by pressing forward, down, then forward while pressing both buttons when the lightning icon is flashing next to your character's health bar. If you pull off the move and hit your opponent with it, you will deal a ton of damage to the health. So the first 3 stages of story game consist of fighting the Putty Patrol and 1 or 2 villains from Season 2 of the show, with Stage 1 being Beancaster, Stage 2 being Goldar, and Stage 3 being Jaws of Destruction. When you defeat the villain, he grows in size and then you must fight him again as the Thunder Megazord. The Thunder Megazord is a beast. I would say he's my favorite character to use in the game, mainly because he has an awesome moveset. In Stage 4, you fight the Oozeman. Ivan Ooze, who is the villain of this movie, eventually shows up and one-shots you. In Stage 5, you face the Hornitron as a new Megazord, the Ninja Mega Falconzord, and a giant monster battle. Stage 6 is also a giant monster battle, where you face the Ivan Ectomorphicon, and you must defeat him twice. Oh, I can't forget to mention the music. It's really good. The track that plays on this stage is my favorite in the game, so take a listen. After beating Stage 6, you will have beaten Story Mode. Alright, now I'm going to show you Versus Game. It's really cool that you can play as any character that appeared in the story mode. Who you pick will determine the amount of opponents you will face. For example, the Rangers themselves never got big, so they can't face any opponents that were always giant. While Goldar, for example, faces everyone because he was small and big. Something I should mention is opponents are way harder in Versus Game. You can breeze through the story game, but then get your ass kicked once you go into Versus Game. The computers seriously don't mess around here. You need to be on top of your game to beat them. When you beat an opponent, you just move on to the next one until there are no more remaining. One of my complaints about this game is the pause menu doesn't let you exit to the main menu. Only losing in Versus Game gives you the opportunity to return to the main menu. That seems like a big oversight. So the question remains, does this game hold up? It depends on what you're looking for. This is not a game with a ton of content. You can beat the story mode in under an hour, and after that, there's just a Versus Game. You'll eventually get bored of it. But before you do, it's a lot of fun. It has an accessible yet deep fighting system, and it can evoke childhood memories and nostalgia if you grew up watching the Power Rangers. I say give it a go, but don't expect it to entertain you forever. Eventually though, you may want to play it again like I do sometimes. This was Ultra Chunky 64. See you next time.